Hi there. It's lovely to be spending the evening with you. My name is Monica Pillai. I am a coach, facilitator, and people function consultant. I'm going to be exploring, hopefully, with all of you today, something about how do we be resilient during the pandemic. Yeah, and so that's what we're going to be discussing over the next maybe 15-20 minutes. This conversation comes to you in partnership with Jola MS. So let's jump right into what, is a difficult conversation at any time, but right now it's even harder just because of, just how scary the times are that we are living in. Let me first start by saying that I hope all of you are safe, you're doing well, your families, your loved ones are doing well. I'm guessing that we have people from across the country, if not from outside as well. And these are just really uncertain times, right? So I'm really hoping that everybody is safe, is indoors, and has the support that everybody needs. This pandemic actually has caused already a lot of pain and a lot of suffering. And when I was thinking about what to say to all of you a couple of weeks back, what I was thinking of was nowhere close to what I'm going to be talking about. It's gotten really, really personal really fast. I don't know about you, I have a lot of friends and colleagues, family members who've been impacted by this. So if you're in a similar place, hang in there. So I want to introduce the idea that what we're looking at is this is actually a war, right? So typically when there's no hope visible, when the situation is this unfamiliar, you tend to think there's something going on that we can probably solve, right? But I came to this realization because I recognize that there's one group of people I've been talking to who are relatively calm, who are functioning, who are very steady, and these are people who've served in the armed forces. So I have a friend who's a retired officer who said that this is what they trained for, the uncertainty, the risk, carrying on in the face of pain and loss. And that's when I realized that maybe this is another war. Typically in a war, you have us and you have them, and we know who them are because they have a different uniform from ours, right? They're the bad guys. They look different from us, so we know we have to hate them or go after them. Unfortunately, we are waging a war against something that's so tiny that we can't see. So how do you know whom to hate or how to hate? Yeah. So continuing with that war analogy, if this is a war, the enemy has crossed the gates. The enemy is inside. All we can do just about now is to be very, very careful and just keep taking one step in front of the other. And the only way forward, and this is a very difficult message to give, is through accepting that there is going to be pain and accepting that there is possibility of loss. So this is our most testing time. This is, as individuals, as families, as a community, as a country, this is really hard. So what I'm going to be doing over the next 15 minutes or so is to explore with all of you some ways of navigating this. So here's what we started off last year at, right? We said, everybody has to have a thermometer, we need to have oximeter, we need to have paracetamol, we need to have phone number of a doctor, we need to have RT-PCR test who will do all those contact details, right? And that's what we started off with. Now, I'm going to, and I hope all of you, first of all, have all of those in place. Those are important, right? Contact details of various people that you can reach out to, etc. I'm going to add one more thing to that list that all of you have at home. And the thing that I'm going to add is called community. As we isolate, and I know that many states, including the one that I live in, they've declared another lockdown, which means we're all indoors, we're isolating, we're not stepping out at all. And one of the essential things in my survival toolkit is my community. What do I mean by community? The group of people that I lean on. So family, friends, so the people that I go to in times of trouble, right? So these are the people who, for a little while, make me forget some of those worries. These are the people who will message and say, listen, call me if you need anything, I'm here. Do you need me to get you something from the pharmacy? If you need somebody to check on your parents while you're ill, I'll go do it. Yeah. So that's community. So before 2020, our community was in different physical locations, right? And that's the problem that we're all still grappling with. We had office friends, we met them at the office cafeteria or during a chai break. We had outside friends that we met at restaurants and cafes, usually on the weekends. Then we had really close friends and our inner circle family whom we met at our house or their house. So we had spaces to meet them in. Once the lockdown happened, we switched all that to Zoom, right, or online meet or whatever, right? And what ended up happening is very soon we realized it doesn't replace in-person connection. So I know there's various reasons why that happens, and Zoom fatigue is a thing, etc. But I'm just going to talk about 2-3 things that really struck me. So I don't know if there's any data on this or research. This is just what I have experienced. First, when I'm talking to somebody face to face in person, the one big thing was compared to when I'm talking to them on Zoom is I can see my own face. So I'm usually looking at, oh, how do I look? Is my hair okay, etc. And I'm not really looking at making eye contact with that person, right? And that's something that's missing. I'm not really looking at their face. I'm not looking at their emotions. The second is we feel that our reality is, a little different in Zoom because, say, in person, if I was talking to somebody and I was talking about something difficult that I was going through, somebody would put their hand on my shoulder or say, there, it's okay. Things will get better. They'll, again, look at me and we'll have this conversation. While right now that closeness is evaporating because I'm looking at a little 2x2, which is that person, and I'm looking at them and you're like, hey, who are you looking at? I'm here, right? So that happens a lot. And the third is, even if I'm meeting 3 other people, if there are 4 of us in a restaurant at a table, I'll typically, everybody's engaged all the time. Everybody's talking, or 2 of us are talking and the other 2 are having their own conversation. So multiple conversations are possible. While on a call, you are always, one person's talking, everybody else is listening or not listening or doing something else, and all of that's possible, right? So those are some of the challenges that online meeting spaces creates for us. What's the solution? Do one-on-one phone calls. Forget about video. You know what they look like. They've not changed very much, right? So just call them up. So especially people that are really close to you, call them frequently. I have people that I call daily, right? And it really helps to end of the day, 15 minutes, just, call and call with a very clear agenda. If they ask you, how are you? Don't say fine. Tell them how you're feeling, right? Unburden yourself and give them that space to unburden themselves. Why am I saying this? Do you think your problem is going to go away just because you're talking about it to somebody? Not at all, right? But this is not about problem solving. This is about recognizing that all of us have a problem which needs to be solved, and all of us have the weight of that problem on our shoulders, right? That burden. And we are carrying that. So the minute I have that conversation with somebody who's a family person or a friend, I'm really for a little while taking that burden, that weight, putting it down for 5 minutes. And they see me doing that. They do the same thing. They're also carrying a weight, right? They put their baggage down for a little bit. And we chat, we feel a little light. Maybe, I suddenly remember what a great person this is and why I always enjoy their company. So if that happens, here's a radical thought for you. Tell them, right? Appreciate them. And then once you're done, you will pick up that burden. You will walk on, right? But 2 things will happen. One, because you've put it down for a little bit, it'll feel lighter for a little bit. And that's fine. And you'll also recognize that maybe in my uphill climb, I'm not alone, because there's the person that I just spoke to. They're also walking beside me. They're not physically walking beside me, but I know that they are struggling with something similar. Yeah. And that has a huge emotional benefit for all of us. So that's one, to remember that we have a burden, put it down for a little bit. It helps you take those 2-3 extra steps a little more stronger, right? And that's all we're all doing at this point. 1 or 2 steps at the same time, forward. I have a second solution to the situation we're finding ourselves in, right? What if talking to my friends is not the only option available to me or my community, right? Couple of scenarios why that might not be a great option. Scenario 1, I go into a conversation with a friend or a family member saying, I had a really bad day and here are things that happened. And they come back with, I went with a burden, they came back with a mountain, right? It's so big that, my problem seems small. So obviously I put my burden aside and I listen to them. and we figure out what should we do together, and then they hang up. They're feeling better as their friend, as their family member. It's my job to make sure that, maybe not my job, it's important for me that they feel better, and I've done that, right? But I'm still feeling bad, right? What do I do in a situation like that? Or in that relationship, you're a listener. I don't know, this happens to me a lot, right? In most relationships, I'm the listener, and that's fine. I choose that role, right? But I have a couple of people that I go to when I want to be heard. Currently, they don't have the bandwidth for me. They're just doing lots of work. They do not have the time for me. In that situation, what do we do, right? Solution, reach out to these amazing people called therapists. I'm not a therapist, and that's one of the reasons why I'm telling you, please reach out to a therapist. They're typically very nice people. They are trained to listen to our emotional conversation and try and make sense of it for us. So they have multiple superpowers, and I'm just going to talk you through each of them, right? One, they're trained to listen. So when you say I'm feeling tired all the time and I'm just watching a lot of Netflix, if I say to you, yeah, me also, what did you watch recently? That's not listening, right? What a therapist is likely to do is to say, tell me more. What's causing the sadness? And that's listening. So therapists are trained to listen better than we are. They have another superpower, which is they're trained not to judge us, right? So for example, if I'm a man and I call and say, I've been crying off late, a therapist is not going to say, real men don't cry, right? Or if I'm a parent and I call and say, I'm just really tired, I want a break from being at home and being in charge and managing the children and online schooling and in-laws and spouse and work conference calls, and they're not going to say, Arey, what a bad parent you are, or what a bad spouse you are, or a bad, they won't do any of that. They will just listen and quietly trying to understand all the reasons why you are feeling this tired. So that's what they will do. Yeah. Third superpower, and they have multiple superpowers. The third one is they won't tell you what to do. They just trust that you know what to do. Currently, you're so overloaded that you don't see it clearly. So their job is to sort of clarify it. So it's like rearview mirror after a rain. You have to clean it a little bit, then you can see. It's similar to that, right? So they're not going to, for example, if I was that hassled parent, they're not going to say, see, you send your children for more coaching, get stronger Wi-Fi, buy that special thing that cooks all your food really quickly, and if your spouse is really bothering you, lock them in the bathroom for 15 minutes while you're on a spa inside the house by putting your feet inside a bucket. So that's not, so their job is not to find you solutions, right? And by the way, please don't do any of those things I told you to do. Those were just examples. Hopefully it's an example that got you to smile a little bit. What they do instead is, they will trust that you know the answer, you will find your own solution, and they will just kind of help you find that answer. Yeah. So, for example, so I have a, yarn here. So I'm going to use that as an example, right? They don't know anything about you that you don't know, right? They know exactly what you've told them. That's not their ability. That's not their skill. That's not their superpower. If I give you this and it's got lots of knots and it's very confused, all they will do is they will realize that, oh, there are some things that need to be cleared up. They might unknot this, right? They will find the thread that will help you then say, acha, now I figured this out. Now I can use this to chart my own path, right? That's what they do. They unknot things for us. So they know exactly what we know about us. Yeah. So that's the second solution. And the third solution is that the topic that we started off with, which is resilience. And so remember earlier I told you that this is like going to war, right? We're like in the middle of a war. And instead of countries, it's a virus that's waged a war against us. Let me talk to you about resilience using the story of another war. So the time is 1960s. The US is in a war with Vietnam. And so they were in Vietnam fighting this war. So very often the American soldiers would get caught and become prisoners of war and be taken away to a camp, a POW camp. Now these camps they make jails look like luxury accommodations. They're really bad. So instances from this camp are that, if it rained, people will be in like neck deep water. There'll be animals, there'll be rats, they'll be trying to eat people. If somebody, it's just really bad conditions, super horrible, inhumane conditions that used to happen. So one of the POW camps used to had one person who was the most high-ranking official who was captured at that point. His name was Admiral Stockdale. He lived in those camps and was repeatedly tortured for 7 years, right? And this anecdote comes from, actually, if I don't know if you're familiar, a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. And the tool that I'm going to talk to you about, it's called Stockdale Paradox, and it's a blueprint for building resilience. It's so easy that in any situation I can just go back in my mind, ask myself, have I done these 2 things? And if yes, I'm resilient. Yeah. So what happened with this person is, when he came out, and he came out successfully, he was very badly off, very malnourished, but he was alive. When he met his family, he reunited. For writing the book, when the author asked him, how did you survive? Was it your positive attitude? He said, no. The people who were hopeful without any reason for hope did not make it. So, for example, think of all of us who said last year that by 2021 it will be gone. 2021 I'll be holidaying in Goa or Manali or Greece or wherever. Suddenly 2021 is here, and it's much worse, and it's harder to deal with it because I had forwarded my hopes to 1 year ahead, right? So he says the same thing, that there were people who said in 6 months our army will come and free us. In 3 months, this will happen. By Christmas we'll be home, because they're Americans, celebrate Christmas. So none of those happened, because it's not like they had access to newspapers or what's going on out there in the real world with the war. They were just blindly hoping. So he says blind hope is a problem. At the same time, the other side, somebody who was completely hopeless and said nothing's going to change for us, it's going to be like this forever, obviously also didn't make it, because their negativity got to them. So he says you have to believe at the same time on 2 opposing things, right? First, accept the full extent of the reality that you're finding yourself in. Take a proper look at it. So if we had to do that with our situation, yes, the second wave is more dangerous. Yes, it is airborne. Yes, there are variants. Yes, those won't protect. Those won't be things that we're protected even if we have a vaccination. Yeah. Yes, there is shortage of medical supplies and hospital beds and oxygen and all of that. Right? In the middle of all that bleakness, we still need to do what we can to get through the day. One thing I do, call up the people that I love and tell them that I love them. I very often do it daily. The other thing that I do is to make sure that I can do what I do what I can currently to just stay safe. So this conversation is called Millennial Mantra, right? Let me use this moment to also call out to anybody out there who's a millennial in appreciation, because the millennials, the youth of the country, that's who's leading the country right now, from hospital bed listings to where do you get oxygen, to raising funds, to being on the ground, to amplifying people's requests on social media. They are doing such a great job. They are such a bridge between the people who are, who are trying and, everybody else. So if you can step out and help, they're doing that. You can't step out and help, they're using the computers, they're using the internet to help. So really, hats off to all of you who are doing all this effort. You're a hope, right? So that's the first thing, to say this is the full extent of our reality. All this is horrible, but also here are people doing such good work, and here's what I can do about it. Second, and at the same time, keep the hope that in the end things will be better. Maybe not in 2021, but we will get over coronavirus. There will be a day when we'll go out without masks. There will be a day when you walk into a movie hall and get that popcorn and watch that film and travel and get to our elderly and tell them that it's okay to go on your morning walk. Please go ahead without telling, took your mask. Did you wash your hand when you came back? Without all of that, they will be able to take a walk someday, right? And that's a hope we need to all hold out to. For example, again, there's a lot of people who are using that hope to create home cooked meals for people who are COVID positive and can't cook for themselves because they're that tired, right? So they're finding hope knowing that things are horrible. Yeah. So that's what we need to do as well. So if I have to sum these 3 things up, I said let's try and do 3 things in the middle of all this horror. 1, find your community. Don't give in to the feeling of being alone. Reach out to your support system. Be support system for somebody else. That's the first. Second is put down your burden. If you feel the burden is heavy, talk to a professional. Yeah, therapists are great people. And the third is build resilience as a skill. Think of the Stockdale paradox. Think of the fact that it's something that all of us can learn, and it's 2 opposing forces. So if I had to draw a Venn diagram This one is the space, where it's reality of life and you really have to think about what does it mean. And this one is keeping hope. So if I mix the two up, that little space in between is the space that Stockdale Paradox exists in. That's the place where we have to see the reality and at the same time not give up hope. I'm going to quote, I'm not too sure where the quote comes from. I think, I'm not going to misquote, but what I've heard, and it gives me solace, not just now but for many years, is that in the end it will be okay. So if it is not okay, it is not the end. So we humans are a very resilient race, and I'm very sure that we will overcome this with a little help from our friends. So I'm going to stop my conversation and see if there are any questions. Right, I have a question here. How do we deal with negative news that has been doing the rounds of late? Lovely question. Doom scrolling, right? Yeah, so the thing is, sometimes, I think partly it's Stockdale Paradox. We have to accept that there are people that we used to follow online, people that were mentors for us, people who were very young, people who were absolute stars, are struggling, are suffering, whatever the extent of that bad news is. But also find sources of joy. So also go and follow, those channels that have puppies or kittens, if that's what works for you, or motorcycle videos, if that's what works for you. Just find what makes you happy. So in my case, for example, I have a new playlist now, which is 2 days old, to deal with the reality now, right? Because listening to that when I'm working gives me hope. Listening to that while I'm working, I'm also crying. But that's what it is. So I would say find the positive to counter the negative, because I'm also choosing to watch that news. Yeah. So also equally choose to find something that's positive. Another question. Thank you, Aditya. What do you think social media's role has been lately? And what should one do or not do on social media at this point? So I'm a bit of a bad person to ask this of, because I'm not very social media savvy, but I'll tell you this. So for people like me who grew up without social media, it's easy to say, hey, switch it off. But I'm not going to ask you to do that, because I know that it's also the place that you're going to all the time to find information. So look for verified sources where somebody is saying, for example, there's lots of people saying, beds available verified at this time. Don't look at that if you don't need a bed for somebody that you know, or if you don't need medical support, right? Look at that only if it's a need, but keep a list of those resources. So social media is a gold mine currently. It's a saving grace, right? So keep those resources handy. Follow people that you think are, doing good work, so that when you need that help, you can go get it. But if people are saying, look at the number of funeral pyres, all that, it's heart-rending, it's painful. Do what you need to do to protect yourself. I hope that answers that question. It's very difficult, Ashini says, to keep yourself calm when you stay away from your family. Absolutely. What can one do to assure them and ourselves? Yeah, thanks. And this is a problem that I'm seeing a lot of my friends face. They're in a different city, family members are in a different city. Video calls, frequent conversations. Also, if they're parents, right? It's easier for us to, because we're also a little more social media aware than they are. So, what I've been doing is I've been bombarding both my parents with lots of forwards which are positive, or, jokes, or, things. So, because they're on WhatsApp so much, because I'm blasting their WhatsApp with a lot of stuff, they're looking at that. And because I'm their child, they prioritize what I'm sending over what their groups are sending. It's a little hollow, but at the moment it seems to be working for them. They're like, every time they call, they're like, oh, that video you sent was so nice. I'm like, acha. So at least they're, they're watching it and they're keeping away from, whatever else. And we're connecting a little bit more than honestly I would have with my full-time job. I would have called them at night twice a week saying, acha, everything's all right. Okay, if there is no problem, don't call me today, right? And I'm being very honest here, right? it's a lot more positive right now because I'm making the effort, they're making the effort. So that's one way to do that. Am I calm? Not at all. I think at the moment, being a little worried is not a bad thing, right? So if your folks are in different cities, I would say keep contact of, keep following who are people who are doing good work, who are people that I can reach out to first. So also at this point, this is something that I was doing with a colleague yesterday. It's a great idea to just scenario plan, right? And it really helps to be able to do that. So think of, if somebody calls and they're coughing, and this happens to one of my parents a lot, they're always coughing. Why are you coughing? Why are you coughing? Why are you? It helps, right? So keep making sure that you're on top of, because they're also doing the same thing that we're doing, trying to protect us by saying nothing. It's just like, no, I need water, right? So they'll do that as well. So you have to watch out, be vigilant. So turn the anxiety into awareness, into vigilance. Say, have they done everything right? Have they been taking their medicines? If they're on medicines, if there is going to be a lockdown, do they have enough for a month? Are they thinking of, do they have money? If they don't have an online account, how are they doing? All of that, right? Also scenario planning in terms of, if somebody I love calls and says, I'm not feeling great, what am I going to do? So having a plan. So in my case, for example, step 1, get symptoms. Step 2, open a document, start writing it down with the date. Step 3, call the RT-PCR person in their neighborhood. Even if it's overkill, it's okay. Just ask them to go get the test. Step 4, be on a call when the person is there. Check to make sure that family members are protected. The RT-PCR person who's come to take the test is protected, right? Follow up to see if right? So that's early few steps. Next, in preparedness, start telling them to take paracetamol, start telling them to steam inhale, all of that. So scenario planning, so that when that situation happens, heaven forbid, if that happens, I at least know what I have to do in the first 4 or 5 hours, right? And action kicks in, panic fades out for a bit. You're not going to sleep in the night, 2 o'clock, it's going to come back. That's reality check, right? But immediately in that moment, you do what is required at that point. So those are a few things that have worked for me. So hopefully they work for you as well. How to handle parents when they get worked up with the current scenario on news. Oh boy, you're all asking the really difficult questions. So what's worked for me is to, instead of saying, hey, this is what I will do, look at what works for them, right? So for one of my parents, it's music. For the other parent, it's, religion or, praying, etc. So then I kind of, what I've been able to do is to say, do this for everybody else, including people you don't know. If you're going to meditate in the evening, meditate for an hour for the whole world, right? And I know that that's something that gives them a lot of comfort. So I'll say, I'll do it with you, right? So we're on a video, or, I'm saying, Acha, I'm going into meditation now, I'll come out at 7 o'clock. So that makes them feel like we're doing this together, even if we're not in the same house or the same city or the same room. And those things help. I think the goal is to say, calm them down using language they understand, not using language I understand. Yeah. If something works for me, 100% is not going to work for them, because I'm probably calming myself down watching YouTube videos, right? So it's probably not going to work for them. So find something that will work for them, speak their language to help them to, jump in maybe with, if you have the time, if you have the bandwidth, and that's a challenge currently for all of us. But if you're able to jump in and, do some activity with them, that'll help them calm down, even if it's just on a video call. I'm sorry, scrolling through questions. How can one maintain emotional balance during these times? Thank you. Hard. So what helps me is to kind of keep in the back of my mind. It's like, when you have like 15 tabs open, right? I'm looking at one tab, but the other tabs are there. They're refreshing. It's a little like that. I might be upset right now, or I might be working right now, or I might be on a call right now, but I'm constantly, one of the tabs in the back is, how concerned am I right now? So I'm catching the emotion as it happens, right? So I'm saying, how angry am I right now? And one of the things that, again, this is a tool that helps me, is I'll just start talking to myself. If I talk to myself, they'll quickly put me in a, they'll say, please don't talk to people. So when I say talking to myself, I mean, I'll start talking. I'll just open a sheet and start writing what's happening. So I'll say, I'm angry at, because, systems are not working. I'm worried. I'm really concerned about, so I write it. It's out. right? And that helps to reduce the level of anger or sadness or whatever. It doesn't go away, but it becomes manageable. And I think realistically for us, feel the emotions for by all means. Just see how can you make it slightly more manageable. So we're on Tuesday today. If the emotion you're feeling is 100, today it'll go to 98. By Friday it'll go to 90, but that's progress. 2 weeks from now, it'll be at 70, it'll be manageable. It's like, there's no easy answer, sadly. There's no... So there are things that people do, for example, people... so I very strongly recommend mindfulness meditation. But the minute somebody says mindfulness meditation, you press that button and it goes, right? It's like switch off, right? So it works, but you need to believe that it works for it to work for you. So, but I think if you think of all your emotions as tabs that are running on the browser on the side, I think that's useful to say, just because I'm not looking at it doesn't mean it's not doing something, right? And it's taking my energy. I have to recharge again, and I don't have time to recharge till night. Yeah, so that might be something that helps. We seem to also be, sorry, I was so busily answering questions, I realized that we're at 5:31. And I think we've also answered all the questions that we have. So, yes, I think we have. So I'm going to sign off for the evening. And before I sign off, I'm just going to leave you with one last line, which is keep your friends close, keep your mask closer. Take care, stay safe. I hope to see all of you safe and healthy on the other side. Take care and take care of each other. Bye.